Happy Friday. Let's talk about your first place St. Louis Cardinals here on Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL. I'm Joe Roderick, joined alongside by the traveling Brenden Schaeffer, who was down at Busch Stadium yesterday. And Brenden, we talked to you earlier in the day when it was wet and you were trying to find somewhere nice and dry to do the show. And when all things were said and done, Cardinals win 5-3. What was your opening day experience like yesterday down at Busch?
It was a little longer than I expected because of the rain delay, but that's all right. They eventually got the game in, and really the skies cleared out. The weather ended up being pretty nice. We just had to be a little bit patient for it. But no, once the game got there, Joe, I don't think you could have seen a more complete performance by the St. Louis Cardinals yesterday. If you talk about all facets of the game, from the starting pitching, I mean, Sonny Gray, let's be honest, was a big question mark coming into the season with the way that his spring went. And so for him to get through five, even though he had been maybe dealing with some illness and some fatigue issues the previous week, that was a nice performance by him. You get a little timely hitting, you get a little power hitting with Newbar and Arenado going deep. It doesn't really get much better than that after the winter that Arenado had. You have that moment in a spot in the game where it was, close for comfort until he hit eighth inning. So you had a little bit of everything, and that doesn't even serve to mention the aggressive base running that I think Cardinals fans appreciate and the defense. I mean, my goodness, with guys like Victor Scott and Brendan Donovan making the plays that they did, I'm not sure the Cardinals win that game if either of those plays go by the wayside. So really every facet of the game ended up being, I think, everything that Cardinals fans could have hoped to have seen yesterday, Joe. And like you said, hey, everybody else in the division's taken a loss, so the Cardinals for now in first place all by their lonesome.
We have done a lot of shows together over the first 6 weeks of Sports Hub STL. We've sat here and talked a lot on Cards Hub 365 about what this season could be, and you being the resident homer and me being the eternal optimist of the Cardinals season here in 2025. We both have given our thoughts as to what a winning season would look like, what a playoff push could look like, and what all had to go right. And I'm glad, I really am. I'm glad that we saw what we saw in game one of the season yesterday and saw what that looks like, rather than a little bit of a slow start, and then maybe you see it like Saturday afternoon in Boston a week from now, and you go, oh yeah, no, that's what we need. Because too many times over the last few years, we've kind of been looking at it, and you're like, all right, nice little win streak here, and they're back in it, and then they'll win one game, and you're like, yes, that's the team we need, and then they go out there and lay an egg the next game. Now, they still have one, maybe two games this weekend, if you look at the weather here in St. Louis.
Yeah.
You kind of iffy. You hope that doesn't happen the next one, but for game one, to see the approach, to see the way that they went out there and battled, we're not Mets fans sitting here talking today about how it's a lost season after one game of the season, and for that I'm very appreciative.
Because the last couple years have kind of felt that way, and look, this could still happen in 2025, but the early sluggish starts the last couple of years were notable for these Cardinals teams. And coming off of an offseason where nothing happened, if it had started that way, I think, look, there's a day off today, so it's nice to have the good vibes for a day there's no game, right? But if it had started sluggish, which it still could, but for now, it's just good. It's all positive. If it had gone the other way, I think that would have been the license for Cardinals fans to start doing some I told you so, some of the impetus behind the booing maybe yesterday from before the game for certain club officials. They would have been kind of leaning in a little bit harder on that. And at least for the moment, you can look at it and say, if 2025 is going to be successful for the Cardinals, it's going to be with the brand of baseball that we saw yesterday. And that proof of concept right off the jump, I think, is something that fans can appreciate. In theory, it can also motivate the team to be able to go, hey, that's what we want to strive to as our standard. When things stray, which they will because it's a long season, say, hey, guys, let's anchor back to what we did on that opening day game and try to be a force in all phases of the game, and that's what they were able to do yesterday.
And yeah, for everything that people wanted to complain about in spring training, the power numbers being one of those things that we heard a lot of, for the team to come out and hit 2 home runs yesterday, you hear almost none of that bitching, complaining. No, but what if? I mean, it really was a complete game to where I don't know what you look at today and what you have to be sour about.
Yeah, I guess if you were going to find a way to be upset about something, you could look at any of the guys in the lineup that went over. I think with those, but even you're not going to have everybody clicking on all cylinders. To have the lineup score in the first 3 innings was another mark in their favor, because sometimes it seems like even in those games in years past where the Cardinals will score, say 4 runs, which is sometimes a benchmark that's enough to get to when you get good pitching and you can still win with that. But it'll come in like 1 inning. You'll have a 3-run or a 4-run inning, and everybody will kind of look around and go, hey, that's enough, right? And no, you lose 6-4, and it ends up being a bit of a downer. To be able to start the game the way that they did and sustain it for those first 3 innings and put up 4 runs, I thought was a really nice mark of a team they're going to have to score that way, Joe. They're going to have to be that type of team. I called them persistent yesterday, and they've got to be that type of persistent, relentless offense to be able to beat teams in multiple ways. And there will be days when not every phase is clicking. Somebody's going to kick a ball around the infield. Somebody's going to make an aggressive base running ploy that doesn't pan out. I think to be able to have a successful year, you got to have like 3 of the 4 working all at once. And I think it's plausible with the type of yesterday. Again, in one game, it was kind of funny to hear post game, an offseason where there's been a lot of criticism. Why wouldn't you, as Ollie Marmol or as the players, sort of lean in and be like, hey, this is kind of what we were saying we could be? You want to puff your chest out a little bit and feel good about the way it went yesterday. Now it'll be a question of sustaining those things, Joe, but I do think it's plausible. We were both in that, that range of, okay, Vegas says 76.5. We're thinking this team can win into the 80s, and it's not a far cry, Joe. If they're up a couple games on 500 and right in the mix when you get toward the end of July, okay, let's stick it out kind of like the Blues have done, and maybe you end up getting a boost in the end that you're not expecting with the current roster. You never know. So, yeah, there's a lot that kind of goes through your mind after a game like yesterday. But like you said, I think mostly positives for sure.
You had a chance yesterday to go into the locker room after the game. You had a chance to be there when Ollie talked after the game. So interested to hear some of the comments that were mentioned, and wondering too. The one thing you and I were texting about during the game yesterday, and the thing that I brought up with Ethan Hannaford last night in the Cards Hub postgame show was that the approach and that the plan that they had offensively was really, really good. It seemed like whatever they worked with Brant Brown, they knew what was coming from Pablo Lopez. They had him really well scouted, not only in the batter's box, but on the bases too, because you saw in the first and second inning, you saw Lars and then you saw Walker both kind of take off before the pitch was thrown. And there was something that the Cardinals had scouted that they were looking for out of Pablo Lopez that maybe wasn't there, but it worked twice. I don't think it would have worked the third time, but it worked twice. And that's all they needed it to work in those situations. But maybe that talks to how prepared the coaching staff is going to have this offense this season.
They were clearly applying pressure when it came to Lopez, and that's always what you want to do. Ollie spoke favorably about it, and he even said, too, let's say some of those don't work out. You get thrown out. You talk about those, but you still take some value in watching replay. The balk call was accurate, but I did ask Lars after the game, like, were you relieved for that balk call given where you were? And he said, yeah, short answer, yes, on that one. So kind of a little bit of humor to it. But the Walker one is interesting because he was picked off if Lopez makes a play, but maybe that's the type of team the Cardinals are going to be, right? They felt like they had something. I don't know what it was. We kind of joked after the game. It felt like Is Pablo Lopez going to be looking weeks down the road trying to figure out, why were the Cardinals running on me like that? And is there something in my game that they identified, even though, really he could have had him out 2 different times. So that was kind of a little bit comical, but it worked out, to your point. And offensively, I think you look at the performance against the changeup from Lopez yesterday. The pitch that Lars Nootbaar hit was actually out of the zone, below the zone. He's not a guy who chases a ton. But I think there was something to it, Joe, based on the comments post-game that they didn't want to really come out and say. But I do think that they were aware, let's just say, that the changeup was a pitch that he likes to use in certain scenarios. And it's one that they clearly, not to say, and Nootbaar even kind of specified out, it's not that I was looking for it, but it was something that I knew he had in his back pocket. And Lars Nootbaar was ready for it when it was thrown in a particular situation. So you're right. I think, again, 1-game sample, but the preparedness that you saw certainly, I think, applied in the batter's box, applied on the base paths. And look, the work that John Jay has done with these outfielders over the winter and into the spring should not be overlooked either, in terms of the preparedness that I think these guys are going to show for various situations and be able to make the plays out there that are needed.
Yeah, and that's, again, one game sample size. It's a small sample size, but it's things that jump out in the first game of the season that we're going to, I think, be paying close attention to over the next few weeks, over the first few series of the season, to figure out if this is who this team is, if it was just a 1-game deal, or if it's one of those where you look back and you go, wow, that was a big move that they made to bring in these new coaches, and you could see the change, you could see the effect, the impact that they've had on these players. So it's 1-game sample size, but it's something that we will look at immediately and figure out if this is who they are.
I mean, you recognize what it's going to have to look like if it's going to go well. That's it. Again, I think it goes back to that proof of concept where all off season and through spring training, guys talked a lot about this is a group that has gelled together. And I think they've also got a pretty good handle, Joe, on what their purpose is, what their mission is with this whole situation. Not really a team that took to transition year. This isn't going to be our year. It's not our turn. That's sort of the vibe I think a lot of Cardinals fans had in the offseason. And in their defense, it was largely based on knowing the payroll was going to go down. And it did. They didn't add anybody in the offseason aside from Phil Maton right at the buzzer. And so, based on that, I think it was inherent that expectations were going to be lower for this team. But again, if you're the guys in that clubhouse, largely the same team from last year, you do kind of have an opportunity to come together as a team and have that chip on your shoulder and say, look, we're more than capable. We're all professionals here. We're all people that are trying whatever stage you're in, whether you're a rookie, whether you're a young player trying to get, into arbitration, whether you're an arbitration guy trying to get that free agent deal, or you're, a veteran that's trying to get that next contract or continue to play. You're all playing for yourselves, but I think they're also finding that they can gel as a group to play for one another. And that's something that, Ollie Marmol said, look, sounds cliche. I know it when it comes out of my mouth, but it really is true with this group that they are playing for one another and have that type of mentality when they hit the field every day.
We also had a chance to see what the bullpen looks like early on yesterday. Sonny Gray only went 5 innings in his start. Kind of gives us in a close game with a day off today. You got a real good look at what Ollie Marmol currently considers his best guys in the bullpen and what an end of the game scenario looks like, given the bats that the Twins had. I think in some cases you're going to see JoJo at the end, maybe in the 8th or 7th, but you see who he has trust in leading up to Ryan Helsley last night when it comes to those right-handed arms.
The one exception to that, Joe, that was mentioned post-game by the manager was that Ryan Fernandez was unavailable for yesterday's game, said it was a little bit of a hip tightness situation and expects him to be fully ready to go for Saturday's game. So that would be the one caveat. And the way that he described it, and it's interesting still to get a window into the viewpoint, basically everybody got bumped back an inning or so based on where they would have been slotted. So to see Phil Maton in the spot that he was in right away was maybe a little bit of a surprise. I think he would have been more of like a 7th inning with Roycroft being more toward the 6th inning if you had Fernandez available as the right-hander to take the 8th inning. However, Roycroft looked really good. It would not
That's what I was going to
surprise
say.
me.
Roycroft might have, he might have Wally pipped Ryan Fernandez.
I think if nothing else, you could see him and Maton flip, where Maton ends up being more situational, but 6th, 7th. And again, you're looking for that matchup, right? Where he's a guy who can spin it, who's going to be a spot in the lineup for the other side that's more susceptible to the breaking ball. And maybe if you're trying to overpower somebody, Roycroft ends up being a nice option. They liked Roycroft last year, right? It kind of felt like they were force feeding him at times, but they saw the stuff. And I think he just needed that first taste of big league ball to be able to get the jitters out. You know, some of the issues with Roycroft, fielding his position, right, a couple times there, once at Wrigley, ended up being an issue. But that's just kind of a rookie situation. And now I think Roycroft is another year more experienced. And dude, he does induce that soft contact, so he'll still have to field his position at times. But he looked really nasty, and I feel like he ends up being a guy that they'll trust as time goes on for more of a 7th and 8th inning role. And look, I don't think it's a given that Fernandez is just locked into the 8th. It'll depend on performance too. Now, granted, he was great last year. It's just nice that it's a good luxury to have multiple right-handers that you can trust to fill into those spots in the late innings, and I think they do above Helsley, who, by the way, was also disgusting. Harrison Bader didn't really get the vibe last night. He homers, he hits that double in the 9th to try to ruin everything. But other than that, I mean, Ryan Helsley was really, really disgusting in that 9th inning. So I think you can generally expect more of the same from him with how he pitched last year, closing out games for the Cardinals.
You see, it's funny you say that because last night on the postgame show, I said the exact opposite about Harrison Bader because I think it was great to see the game he had yesterday because the Cardinals won. So you know, the Cardinals win, everything is sunshine lollipops after one game. Plus the former Cardinal came in and had the best game for the Twins. So you're all happy about him too, but he didn't ruin the game. He didn't ruin the outcome of the game. So we're all happy for Harrison Bader, especially since the Cardinals won.
Yeah, he tried. I mean, that 9th inning double, it was like, la-di-da, cruising along. Here's Helsley, 1, 2, 3. And then and we're going, wait a minute. Technically, not just technically, it's true. The tying run is at the plate, so better strike him out too. But it was a good game for Bader. And it was kind of crazy. I don't know if this was, part of the television broadcast or not. I imagine no. But Bader got the second loudest cheer of the day behind only Ozzie Smith.
That's what Ethan Hannaford said last night. Yeah, he said that. He said that last night. I was shocked to hear that, but at the time, I didn't know that Willie wasn't there yesterday. So that surprised me when he first said Harrison Bader got the second loudest cheer. But then when he told me Willie wasn't there, I was like, okay, I kind of see it. But I also too like Lars Nootbaar, Mason Wynn, Bader still got a bigger ovation
Arenado
than
got
that.
a big
That
cheer.
surprised me.
Tony La Russa. I mean, I'm telling you, to my ears, the decibels were higher on Bader than La Russa, a little bit higher than Arenado, who got a huge ovation. I thought Wilson Contreras got robbed, by the way. John Hewlett's microphone went out right before he was due to announce Wilson. And I feel like you would have got a bigger roar from the crowd, but folks were confused because they're like, do we go? Do we cheer? And it kind of took a little bit of the momentum out of it. I feel bad for Wilson on that one because I think fans would have given him a huge ovation as well if it weren't for the technical difficulty. But yeah, Harrison Bader was fans remember. I don't know. We gotta love him, but it was kind of like, all right, you got a hierarchy of Ozzie Smith, Harrison Bader, and then Scott Rowland, Jim Edmonds, Tony La Russa, that sort of vibe.
Harrison Bader yesterday homers. I don't know if you saw yesterday my Roddy bombs yesterday, Brendan. I had Tyler O'Neill on it yesterday. Harrison Bader homered yesterday. I don't know why nobody suggested I go all former Cardinals on yesterday's because Tommy Edman also homered for the Dodgers again too. So if I would have gone former Cardinals on opening day, I could have cashed out on the home runs yesterday. Instead, I go one for I get one out of O'Neill, Josh Bell, and Matt Wallner did not help me. But here's what I'm going with on today's home runs. Christopher Morel, the Tampa Bay Rays make their season debut at George Steinbrenner Stadium against the Rockies. But Christopher Morel, Freddie Freeman, and Pete Alonso are my three picks for the for homering today in today's edition of the Roddy Bombs. So a shock to see Morel with the best odds of those three names that I just mentioned.
Is it Freeland that he's up against for the Rockies today? Kyle Freeland, I think, is maybe their starter, and he's got good numbers against him. So that maybe that helps to explain it. I've seen a lot of. I would say that it's hard to say with a home run pick that somebody is chalk, but that might be the chalk because everybody seems to be thinking that Morel's going to have a big game. But I bid you good luck on that. What did it say? A buck can win you 130 or something like that. They call that a long shot for a reason, but you're taking your shot. I respect it.
I just need to hit one time this year to cover the entire
to
season.
Justify it. And then the second one is just now it's a bonus. Now you're in the black. I love it.
Exactly. Morel is in his career 2 for 6 against Kyle Freeland. Those two hits are both home runs.
Okay, there you go. That helps explain it, I suppose. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you never know. You never know. It just takes one magical day, I suppose.
It does. It will, we'll see how many times I'm sitting there. I got a lot of text. I got a lot of text yesterday when O'Neill started the day with a home run. Because things were starting off real well. So that's the name of the game here. Is you need that first. If Morel homers, then we're locked in the rest of the night.
Yeah. So now let me ask you: if I set the over under at 0.5 on how many of these you're gonna knock out of the park this year, what's it? Are you taking the over on yourself? What do you think?
I'm gonna have 180 chances at this, right?
Yeah,
about
a lot of opportunity.
80 chances. I mean, there will be a day where I'm just going to go like Judge Ohtani and like Alonso.
Pay like $7. No, it'll be more than that. Don't worry. It'll be okay.
But there will come a day where I just go with it, as you mentioned, chalk on these. And we'll see we'll see if that plays out. But if I get one, you're going to hear about it for a long time.
Oh, I am sure that I will, and rightfully so. That's a tough deal to do. But granted, a lot of these guys are hitting 30 homers a year, 25 a year. So you just got to line them up on the same day. I don't know, how hard could it be? Probably pretty hard. Probably hard to do. We'll see. I'll take the over on it on your behalf. I'll say you get one this year. I don't know when it's going to happen. But when it happens, we'll do a toast in your name on the show to congratulate you. But I think you get one.
If it was easy, everybody would do it, unless you live in Missouri. Hey, looking ahead at the weekend, because you will not be on any of the shows the rest of the week. I want to get your thoughts on the Cardinals' next two games, if they both happen this weekend. You have Eric Fetty on the mound on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we're getting Andre Palante for the Cardinals. It's Bailey Ober on Sunday, Joe Ryan on for tomorrow's game. How do you think the Cardinals match up these next two games against this Twins pitching?
Yeah, no, I haven't looked at the lineups to see history, if there's some history with anybody on the roster. Ryan strikes me as a guy who could maybe rack up some strikeouts against. Trying to keep that consistent approach like they had yesterday, I think can help them. More than anything, Joe, I'm looking forward to the pitching. I want to see what Fetty and Palante look like. Also, though, aren't we going to have a little bit of fun with the lineup construction? Are we going to see Gorman? How soon do we see him? How long do we have to wait? Do they continue to roll Herrera? I mean, Herrera, man, that's another guy that raked yesterday, took really good ABs. But at certain points, are they going to want to prioritize defense behind the plate like they did for the ninth inning yesterday and get Fajas some opportunities? It's something we'll talk about all year long, the lineups, and Ollie Marmol knows it and says, hey, I'm happy to talk about it. He kind of debriefed us yesterday, talking with the writers in his office, and said, look, I know it's going to be a topic of conversation, and I'm wide open to that and understanding of it. But it's just going to be one of those things that there's going to be times for believing in certain players and matchups that you go, are you sure? And then there's going to be other times where you say, no, we have to max this one out. Balancing the development of these players with the will to win each day. And so long, Joe, but I'm excited to watch it this weekend.
That's what we have lined up for you this weekend. Both of them 1:15 on Saturday and then 1:15 on Sunday. And again, the weather is not looking good at all on Sunday.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I would also imagine the Saturday game. I don't think it's going to start at 1:15. My guess is that's a little later start time situation similar to what we had happen yesterday in the home opener with the way the weather's starting to look. So
I am not a big rain delay guy when it comes to, I try to miss them when I can. And so after a rain delay yesterday, I decided to flee the state for the rest of the weekend in response to make sure I don't have to cover a rain delay game.
Yeah, I was gonna, what goes on in the press box during an hour and a half rain delay? What do you guys doing?
Sit there.
Time?
You sit there, and an hour and a half is a lot better than it could be on some of those nights. And I'm not usually fond of sticking those out, but there will be times where it has to happen, and I get that too.
Well, we appreciate you sticking it out yesterday. Lots of great coverage, and you can read Brendan's game recap on sportshubstl.com from yesterday as well. Yes?
You'll get a kick out of this, though. You know what the rain delay did cost me? I was going to try to make it to my bowling league after the game. I was able to do it last year, but that was completely out the window with the 90-minute rain delay. So that meant you got full comprehensive coverage. I wasn't trying to duck out of the clubhouse a minute or two early. It didn't happen that way. So you're welcome.
Well, we appreciate it. Have a safe drive this weekend, and we will see you back on Sports Hub STL early next week.
Yeah, and by the way, I still will have an article coming out a little more on Victor Scott in the next day or so.
All right. Hey, that's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been another edition of Cards Hub 365 presented by Gray Bar. We'll be back at it again tomorrow and Sunday. It's baseball for breakfast early, both Saturday and Sunday with the early games. And we'll have your Hot Shots post-game shows, Cards Hub post-games, both afternoons as well. So lots of Cardinal coverage here all weekend long on Sports Hub STL. For Brenden Schaeffer, I'm Joe Roderick. We'll talk to you this weekend right here on Sports Hub STL.